A pleasure day.
Yeah, so on Wednesday, the three of us drove, drove to quite a few places, but we had this goal of trying to improve the coverage in a couple of different grid cells in the Western Cape. It's the two that are closest to us that we can still make a difference, a significant difference in within one day. And just as a reminder, I spoke about this briefly last week, but this is sort of the focus of my master's research. So we're trying to fill in gaps in the maps in the Western Cape and, well, all across Southern Africa, but we're focusing on the Western Cape for now because of the lockdown, and trying to refresh species records in areas that haven't been visited recently. So this is the route that we sort of followed. Just took this from BirdPixing, so it's not very fancy, but we went down south and east and near Cape Agulhas, and we had 3 grid cells that we were targeting. And the first one was 3419 CB. We didn't spend a lot of time here. We weren't specifically focused on this grid cell, but it was right next to the one that we did want to spend time in. So it was 67 species before we went, and the records are still being processed, but we were able to make a difference, and now there's 73 species that are listed in the grid cell. So we did add some. This is in Gansbaai, and this is where we had lunch. So we walked along the beach and took about 20 to 30 minutes and just split up and walked to see what we could find. So we found greyback cisticola and acacia pied barbet and coryphorhynchia and Cape cormorant, house sparrow, Cape sparrow. And these were all new species for that grid cell. So it shows you that some of the most common things are sometimes the ones that have been overlooked or missed in the process. So it's important to take every species that you see when you visit the grid cells. And Itxaso is going to talk about the second place that we went to, where we spent a lot of time.
Yeah. So this grid cell was our main focus for the day, because it only has 23 species recorded before. It only had, and it's quite a big. It covers quite a big part of land. So yeah, that's where we spend most of the day. And I think it's amazing that they were recorded before 23 and now they are 71. And I believe there's a couple more that they still haven't been identified. So I'm gonna, yeah, so, well, can you go to the next, please?
Oh, sorry, yeah.
Yeah, so this is slide, sorry. This grid cell is, we know as the Barkis boss. This
very quickly, yeah.
Very difficult. So yeah, that's how we know the grid cell. And this was where the species that were recorded here before. So the 23 species. So we have some, yeah, like nice species as the, sorry, can you go one up? Sorry. Like Martial eagle, for example, it was recorded, but most of them, they were quite common species. And yeah, so this is the species that were recorded before. So mostly we think it was someone recording it from the garden, sitting in the garden and watching the bird feeding and taking photos. And now I'm gonna show you some of the new species we recorded for the grid cell, not all of them. So these are some of they are quite common species, but they were new. So we have the spoonbill, Hartlepool's gull, streaky-headed seed eater, brimstone canary, and the Cape shoveler. We also collected African hoop, which is always nice to see, a nice bird to see, and the southern
yeah, sure.
Jackal buzzard, lots of jackal buzzards, but we saw so many that we were able to take nice pictures of them. And Cape grassbird with a special lighting. And then we saw some very, very, very common species. And when I say very, very common, it's because I'm sure that if you just pass through that grid cell, it's impossible that you are not going to see these species. But amazingly, there were still new species for the grid cell. So I think that's that's amazing that some of these, like as the guinea fowl or the doves, the hadida ibis that that actually we thought it was a raptor, because if you see the hadida, it's we call it hadida raptor, because it's sitting like raptors. I don't know. We stopped because we thought it was a raptor, and then okay, yeah, it's a harira. But I mean, it's still new. Or the Egyptian goose, the one in the top right. That's Egyptian goose, blacksmith plover, and common pistol. So yeah, very very common species that we saw several times. And then we also saw some species that they are not that common. And it was really nice to see them. So this is the brown-hooded kingfisher. And we saw this was in Barnkirchbos, the name of the, I don't know how to pronounce the name of the, it was just there. It was an amazing one, and we were able to get a nice picture because it was really close to us. And we also got some of the nice records, and even if the quality of the photo is not that good, it's always valid for the virtual museum. That's what is great about it. So it's the Burches Kokon, the fish eagle. And then the two on the bottom, we believe, or they were identified as African hawk harrier juvenile, African hawk harriers. Yeah, so these were some of the, I think, amazing records that we got just 2 days ago. Yeah. And now, yeah, Karis again.
So the last grid cell that we visited was this one, 3419 DC, and it had no records when we visited. You can kind of see why if you look, just this tiny little portion is land and the rest is all water. So it's not surprising that there haven't been many submissions from there. And again, the records are still being processed, but we've already got 21 species there now, which is fantastic. So this is the collage of the records that we submitted, and you can see some overlap because, I mean, we were operating separately, so sometimes we saw the same bird and two of us would take a photo of it, but it's still valuable. So it's good to have at least a good start in that grid cell of some of the most common species. Like we've got common fiscal, which is definitely well represented in the grid cell, and the sunbirds and the mouse bird. And this was sort of the highlight for us. We got some nice photos of bar-throated apollos, which can be really difficult to photograph because they don't like to sit still. So it's quite fun to be able to get some nice views of those. And that's kind of where we left off when we headed back to Cape Town afterwards, and we treated it absolutely fantastic. So that was our trip.
Thanks, Karis. Thanks, Itxaso. Are there questions? So can you describe our bird pixing strategy to get from 23 to 71 in a day? Karis or Itxaso, what do we do?
I was going to say we try to visit as many habitat types within the grid cell as we can. So look in rural areas where you'll find the species that are associated with people, like the house sparrows and the common starlings and the red-eyed doves and speckled pigeons, and then also spend time on the coastline where you'll find the white-fronted plovers and the cormorants and gulls and things. So just don't focus all of our energies in one spot, but try to visit multiple areas and spend a bit of time there and get out and walk around and see what we can find, and usually have more success with that than just driving through or focusing on one spot in particular.
Yeah, I think one of the remarkable things is you stop for something like Hadida, and then as you look around, there's all sorts of other things that pop out of the woodwork as you're looking at the common things. So. Right, Dave. So this is your home patch. Does anything strike you about what we saw that was unusual?
Yes. I think somebody said you saw a martial eagle.
Well, a martial eagle has been recorded in the grid cell in the past. I think it was about a 2016 record.
We've seen them in the past, but they're not common.
They're not common. I must say the kingfisher was interesting. You know, it's amazing how birds come and go, don't they? You know, I mean, at our place down there, we've seen things like we've got this artificial pond, and we've had things like reed cormorants coming in there to fish out the frogs, and then they just disappear. We haven't seen them for about a year, but at one stage we saw it regularly, and I suppose they were just using the food source, and when the frogs dried up, they buzzed off. but it's quite interesting because we've had things like the pygmy kingfisher also fishing there and then buzzing off after a while. So it's quite interesting how they move around tremendously. So we must, I tell you, Liz, we must, you're making us feel guilty because I think we're going to start doing that cell more regularly because we focus it, but at the moment we've got a hell of a lot of work to do. You know, we haven't been there for 4 months and all the maintenance comes up.
Yeah.
So that has tended to hinder us a little bit. But perhaps we should spend every now and again, just do that cell and it'll plug that gap.
Well, the one we're in is not Bart's Fearless Force, it's next door.
It's next door, yeah.
But I think it's still not very heavily represented. You could do more.
Anyway.
Thank you for inviting us.
Yes,